The living room in their modest suburban home in Ohio felt suffocating that Sunday afternoon. Tegan sat on the edge of the couch, her fingers twisting the hem of her blouse as she faced her 18-year-old daughter Evelyn. "I can't hide it anymore, Evelyn. I've been struggling for years, but the truth is I'm a lesbian. I've fallen in love with a woman named Rachel." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Evelyn's eyes widened, her mouth opening in shock before her face hardened. "Mom, what are you saying? After everything we've been through, after Dad left, after all the church services and prayers, you're choosing sin over us?" Tegan felt her chest tighten, and as Evelyn continued, "How could you do this to our family? The Bible is clear, Mom. This is not who we are." The tears began to flow uncontrollably down Tegan's cheeks. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing quietly in the living room that had once been a sanctuary of faith and routine. Tegan had always been the picture of quiet strength in their small Ohio town. At 42, she still looked like the young woman who had walked down the aisle at 21 in the same white dress her mother had worn, convinced that marriage and motherhood would quiet the whispers in her heart. But those whispers never stopped. They had started in high school when she caught herself staring too long at the captain of the girls' basketball team during youth group outings. She pushed them down, married her high school sweetheart, and welcomed Evelyn into the world 2 years later. When the marriage crumbled 5 years after that, Tegan told everyone it was because they had grown apart. In truth, she had finally admitted to herself in the quiet hours after Evelyn fell asleep that she was not wired the same way as the other wives at Bible study. Yet she never acted on it. She threw herself into raising Evelyn alone, working double shifts at the public library, volunteering at the church soup kitchen, and making sure her daughter memorized every verse about love and family. The cross on the living room wall and the worn Bible on the coffee table were not decorations. They were the compass Tegan had used to navigate every decision. Now that compass felt broken. Rachel had entered her life 6 months earlier at a staff training seminar for librarians across the county. Rachel was warm, patient, and carried herself with a quiet confidence that made Tegan feel seen for the first time in decades. Their conversations started over coffee and stretched into long walks in the park after work. For the first time, Tegan did not have to pretend. But every moment of joy with Rachel came with a shadow of guilt. She prayed harder, fasted, read more scripture, yet the feelings only grew clearer. Finally, after months of secret counseling sessions with a therapist in the next town over, Tegan decided Evelyn deserved the truth. At 18, her daughter was old enough to understand. Or so Tegan had convinced herself. The sobs quieted, but the room stayed heavy. Evelyn stood frozen, arms crossed, her senior year hoodie suddenly looking too big on her frame. "I don't even know who you are right now," she whispered before turning and disappearing up the stairs. Tegan remained on the couch until the streetlights flickered on outside. The house that had always echoed with hymns and laughter now felt like a stranger's home. She wiped her face and stared at the family photos on the mantel, images of the 3 of them at church picnics, at Evelyn's baptism, at her own wedding. Every smile in those frames suddenly looked like a lie she had told the world and herself. The weight of what she had just unleashed pressed down harder than any sermon she had ever heard. Tegan wondered if love could ever be strong enough to survive the kind of fracture she had just created in the only family she had left. Upstairs, Evelyn's door slammed shut with a finality that echoed through the walls. Tegan closed her eyes and let the tears come again, softer this time, the kind that come when the first wave of shock has passed and the long ache of consequences begins to settle in. She had rehearsed this moment 100 times in her mind, but nothing prepared her for the raw hurt in her daughter's voice, or the way it mirrored the hurt she had carried alone for so long. The clock on the wall ticked past 9, and still she sat there, alone with the silence and the cross that seemed to watch her with quiet judgment. The next morning arrived with the same gray Ohio sky that had hung over their lives for weeks. Evelyn came downstairs in silence, grabbed a granola bar from the pantry, and headed for the door without a word. Tegan's voice cracked as she called after her. "We need to talk about this, sweetheart. Please." Evelyn paused, backpack slung over one shoulder, and turned just enough for Tegan to see the red rims around her eyes. "Talk about what, Mom? How you're throwing away everything Pastor Daniels preaches. How you're telling me the life you gave me was built on a lie." The words landed like stones. Tegan stepped forward, reaching out, but Evelyn flinched. I stayed up all night reading the verses again. Leviticus, Romans, Corinthians. It's all there. You taught them to me yourself. Tegan felt the old familiar knot in her stomach tighten. She had indeed taught those verses line by line, during bedtime prayers and Sunday school drives. I know what the verses say, Evelyn. I've wrestled with them for 20 years. But I also know what my heart has been telling me since I was your age. This isn't a choice I woke up and made. It's who I am. Evelyn laughed, a bitter sound that did not belong to an 18-year-old. Who you are. You're my mother. You're the woman who made me memorize the 10 Commandments before I could ride a bike. You're the one who said love means sacrifice. Now you're sacrificing me and everything we believe for some woman you met at work. The accusation hung between them, sharp and undeniable. They stood in the kitchen, the refrigerator humming like a distant judgment. Tegan tried again, voice softer. Rachel isn't some woman. She's kind. She listens. For the first time I don't feel like I'm pretending every single day. Evelyn's eyes filled again. And what about me? Do I get to pretend too? Pretend my mom isn't going against God? Pretend the kids at youth group won't whisper when they find out? Because they will. You know they will. Tegan had no answer that could bridge the gap. She had spent years shielding Evelyn from the world's harsher edges, only to become the edge herself. The argument stretched through the morning and spilled into the afternoon. Evelyn pulled out her phone and read verses aloud, voice trembling but determined. Tegan listened, nodding at parts, pushing back at others with the quiet arguments she had gathered from late-night reading, and the therapist's gentle questions. The Bible also says love your neighbor, Evelyn. Says judge not. I'm not asking you to change your faith. I'm asking you to see me as your mother first. Evelyn shook her head. How can I when you've changed the rules? By the time Evelyn left for her after-school job at the coffee shop, the air between them had grown thick with words neither could take back. That evening Tegan sat alone again, the house too quiet. She dialed Rachel's number, but hung up before it rang. The guilt was not gone. It had simply shifted shape. Now it wore her daughter's face. She opened the Bible on the coffee table, turned to the passages Evelyn had quoted, and read them slowly. The ink felt heavier than before. Yet when she closed her eyes, she still saw Rachel's smile, still felt the peace that had settled over her the first time they held hands in the park. Two truths lived inside her now, pulling in opposite directions, and neither seemed willing to yield. Outside, the streetlights came on one by one, and Tegan remained on the couch, wondering how long a heart could hold both love and sorrow without breaking completely. The news traveled faster than Tegan expected. By Wednesday evening her mother, Margaret, was at the front door, Bible in hand and lips pressed into a thin line. Evelyn called me, she said without greeting. She's devastated, Tegan. We all are. They sat in the same living room where the confession had begun. Margaret did not raise her voice, she never did. Instead she spoke with the calm certainty of someone who had never questioned her path. You were raised better than this. Your father and I taught you the straight and narrow. What example are you setting for your daughter? Tegan tried to explain the years of silent struggle, but each sentence met the same gentle wall. Feelings are not facts, dear. Temptation is not truth. Evelyn stayed in her room during the visit, door closed, music playing low. When Margaret finally left, promising to pray and to speak with Pastor Daniels, the house felt even smaller. Tegan climbed the stairs and knocked softly. Can I come in? No answer. She opened the door anyway. Evelyn was on her bed, knees drawn up, staring at the ceiling. Grandma says you're confused. That maybe you need more prayer. Tegan sat on the edge of the bed. I've prayed more than you know. This isn't confusion, Evelyn. It's clarity. Evelyn turned her head away. Clarity that hurts everyone else. Rachel gets the real you. I get the version that lied for 18 years. The conversation stretched late into the night. Evelyn spoke of the youth group retreat she had planned to attend, the friends who already sensed something was wrong. Tegan listened to every fear, every scripture, every plea. She offered her own stories, memories of the loneliness that had lived inside her marriage, the nights she cried in the shower so Evelyn would not hear. For a moment the anger softened into something closer to sorrow on both sides. Evelyn's voice cracked when she asked, "Did you ever love Dad at all?" Tegan answered honestly, I loved the life we built. I loved you. But I was never in love the way I'm supposed to be. The honesty landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. By midnight they had talked themselves empty. Evelyn fell asleep with her head on Tegan's lap, the way she had when she was small. Tegan stayed there until her legs went numb, stroking her daughter's hair and wondering if this fragile truce could last. Downstairs the cross on the wall seemed to glow faintly in the lamplight. Tegan carried Evelyn's words with her to bed, turning them over like worry stones. No one was entirely wrong. Her mother's faith had given her stability. Evelyn's pain was real. Her own longing was real too. The question was whether any of them could survive the collision without losing pieces of themselves. The following days brought more collisions. Pastor Daniels called, gentle but firm, offering counseling sessions for the whole family. Tegan's co-workers noticed her distraction. Rachel texted daily, patient and steady, reminding Tegan she was not alone. Each message was a small lifeline and a fresh reminder of the cost. Tegan began to see how the truth she had spoken had fractured more than one relationship. Yet in the quiet moments between arguments, she also felt a strange new lightness, as if a weight she had carried since childhood had finally been named. The house still echoed with tension, but something inside Tegan was beginning to breathe. Thanksgiving arrived with its usual rituals, but the table felt half empty even with all the plates set. Margaret came along with Tegan's younger brother and his wife, their 2 children chattering about school. Evelyn helped in the kitchen, polite but distant, avoiding eye contact whenever Rachel's name floated near the conversation. Tegan had not invited Rachel, not yet. The decision stung, but she told herself it was for Evelyn's sake. Halfway through the meal, the topic surfaced anyway. Margaret set down her fork. We've been praying for you, Tegan. The church has a support group for struggles like this. Evelyn stared at her plate. Tegan felt the old heat rise in her cheeks. I'm not struggling with an illness, Mom. I'm living with who I am. The argument that followed was quieter than the first one but deeper. Evelyn spoke up for the first time in days. You keep saying it's who you are, but what about who we are? Our family? The life we had before. Her voice carried the weight of every sleepless night since the confession. Tegan answered carefully, describing the years of pretending, the way every holiday had felt like a performance. Her brother tried to mediate, suggesting compromise, prayer time. No one raised their voice, yet every sentence carried accusation and defense in equal measure. By the time the pumpkin pie was served, the table had gone silent except for the children's innocent questions about dessert. Later, while the others watched football, Evelyn found Tegan in the kitchen washing dishes. I told my friends at school, she said quietly. They don't know what to say. Some of them think I should move in with Grandma. The words landed softly but struck hard. Tegan dried her hands and faced her daughter. I never wanted to force you to choose sides. Evelyn shrugged, eyes shining. But you did. The minute you said Rachel's name. They stood there, water running, the scent of turkey still thick in the air. 2 people who loved each other caught in a current neither had chosen. That night after everyone left, Tegan sat on the porch steps despite the cold. Rachel called, and this time Tegan answered. They talked for an hour about ordinary things, work, the weather, a book they both wanted to read. The normalcy felt like medicine. When she hung up, Tegan realized she had smiled for the first time in weeks. Inside, Evelyn's light was still on. Tegan climbed the stairs, paused outside the door, and whispered goodnight through the wood. No answer came, but the silence felt less hostile than before. Small steps, she told herself. Small steps through a minefield of belief and love. The weeks after Thanksgiving brought more small steps and larger stumbles. Evelyn began seeing the school counselor. Tegan attended a support group for Christian parents of LGBTQ children, listening more than speaking. Rachel met her for coffee in public places, never pushing, always present. Each meeting chipped away at the isolation Tegan had lived with for so long. Yet every time she returned home and saw Evelyn's closed door, the cost became visible again. No one was winning. Everyone was simply trying to survive the same storm. Winter deepened, and with it the distance between mother and daughter seemed to crystallize. Evelyn threw herself into college applications, late-night study sessions, anything that kept her out of the house. Tegan continued her quiet routine at the library, stealing moments with Rachel during lunch breaks or after closing. One Saturday in December they walked the frozen paths of the town park, hands gloved but fingers brushing. Rachel stopped under a bare oak tree. "You don't have to choose between us," she said softly. "But you do have to choose yourself." Tegan nodded, throat tight. The words were simple and terrifying. At home, Evelyn found an old photo album in the attic and brought it downstairs. They sat together on the couch for the first time since the confession, turning pages of Evelyn's childhood. There were pictures of birthday parties, soccer games, Christmas pageants at church. Evelyn pointed to one of Tegan smiling beside her ex-husband. "You looked happy here." Tegan traced the image. "I was happy in pieces. Never all at once." Evelyn closed the album. "I'm trying, Mom. I really am. But every time I picture you with her, it feels like the ground moves." Tegan reached for her daughter's hand. "Then we sit with the ground moving until it feels steady again. That's all I can ask." The conversation opened small doors. Evelyn asked questions about Rachel, not with anger but with cautious curiosity. Tegan answered honestly, describing how Rachel made her laugh, how they shared books and walks in silences that did not need filling. Evelyn listened without interrupting. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. "I don't want to lose you." Tegan pulled her close. "You won't. Not if we both keep showing up." They stayed that way until the heater clicked on. Two people learning a new language of love in the ruins of the old one. Outside the house the world kept turning. Tegan's brother called less often. Margaret sent weekly devotionals by text. Pastor Daniels invited Evelyn to lead the youth Christmas program, a quiet way of keeping her anchored. Tegan attended the service alone, sitting in the back pew, watching her daughter stand confidently at the microphone. Pride and sorrow mixed in equal measure. After the program, Evelyn found her in the foyer. "I saw you there," she said. "Thanks for coming." It was the first voluntary kindness since the confession. Tegan carried the moment home like a fragile gift. Rachel began to appear in small ways. A text Evelyn saw on the kitchen counter. A scarf left on the couch. Each sighting brought a new conversation, sometimes tense, sometimes calm. Evelyn's questions grew more specific. Does she go to church? Does she believe in God? Tegan answered carefully, describing Rachel's own quiet faith, different from theirs but sincere. The answers did not erase Evelyn's discomfort, but they chipped away at the caricature she had built in her mind. Slowly, painfully, the family was renegotiating its shape. Spring arrived with the first crocuses pushing through the Ohio soil. Evelyn had received acceptance letters from 3 colleges, each one a step toward leaving the house that still carried the echo of their hardest conversation. Tegan helped her pack boxes one Saturday while Rachel waited outside in the car, giving them space. Evelyn paused over a box of childhood books. "I'm still mad sometimes," she said. "But I'm also proud of you for not hiding anymore." Tegan swallowed hard. "And I'm proud of you for staying at the table even when it hurt." They hugged longer than they had in months, the kind of hug that carries both forgiveness and the knowledge that forgiveness is never complete. Rachel stepped inside only after Evelyn invited her. They sat at the kitchen table, 3 cups of coffee between them. Conversation was careful, polite, but real. Evelyn asked Rachel about her job, her family, her favorite books. Rachel answered with the same steady warmth that had first drawn Tegan in. When Evelyn finally said, "I don't understand it all, but I see how Mom smiles now," the room grew quiet with possibility. No one declared victory. No one claimed defeat. They simply sat in the new reality they had all helped create. Months later, on a warm June evening, Tegan stood in the same living room watching Evelyn load the last suitcase into the car. Rachel waited on the porch, giving the moment to mother and daughter. Evelyn turned at the door. "Call me when you get lonely," she said. "And tell Rachel I said hi." Tegan smiled through the tears that came anyway. "I will. Every week." They hugged again and Evelyn whispered, "I love you, Mom." The words carried every argument, every prayer, every tear they had shared. Tegan watched the car pull away until the taillights disappeared around the corner. She stepped onto the porch where Rachel waited. They stood together in the soft evening light, hands linked, the house behind them quieter now but no longer empty. Tegan looked at the cross on the wall through the open door, then at the woman beside her. The path ahead was not easier, only clearer. She had lost pieces of the life she once knew, but she had gained pieces of herself she never thought she would meet. Evelyn had lost the mother she thought she had, but she had gained a mother who was finally honest. No one had won. No one had lost entirely. They had simply chosen, and now they lived with the choosing. Was Tegan right to choose her truth even when it fractured the family she had built on faith? Or should she have carried the secret longer to spare Evelyn the pain?